This is KTN Prime with Nancy Kachungira and Wilson Buru.
Well, a very good evening to you and welcome to KTN Prime. It is most certainly the most comprehensive bulletin in the country.
Yes, thank you for joining us this evening. Our sign language interpreter is William Silla. It is now 9 days since the Mpeketoni attack, in which at least 60 people lost their lives. And tonight, there's even more worry in Lamu.
Indeed, and that is because just last night, at least 5 more people were killed in fresh attacks in Witu, just about 30 kilometers from Mpeketoni.
Now, these latest killings come on the back of renewed fighting in Wajir, close to the border with Mandera. And tonight we're asking, has Kenya become a gun country where armed criminals kill innocent civilians at will?
Tonight, we put the spotlight on this growing worry that so far the government seems to have no formula of addressing that coverage. Begins now. Now let's start in Lamu, where police reinforcements have been sent to Witu, where 5 people were killed in fresh attacks last night.
That's right. The 5 were allegedly tortured and their throats slit in the gruesome attack.
Sharon Momanyi begins our coverage.
It was an air of grief and fear. Residents of KTN village coming to terms with the latest surprise attack by killers who came in the dark of night. KTN village is located 7 kilometers from Witu town in Lamu West. When the attackers disappeared, 5 men lay dead.
The community are telling us that they were picked from their houses, from their farms, and assembled at a central place where they were tied at the back and then were tortured and then killed.
The bodies had hands tied behind their backs with some of the victims' throats slit. It is an incident that has added to the growing fear among residents, coming almost exactly 1 week after the Mpeketoni, Mporomoko and Kaisari attacks in the same Lamu County.
There is tension in this village, and some people are saying that they're worried because the number of gangs was big. They're saying over 30 people.
Witu, the scene of Monday night attack, is about 40 kilometers from Mpeketoni, where masked gunmen killed almost 60 and torched business premises last week. There has been heavy presence of security officers in the area working to restore calm and to capture the attackers. Just hours before this late attack, police had even urged residents of Mpeketoni and Kaisari, currently taking refuge in Kitale camp, to return to their homes, citing restored safety.
Encourage businessmen to go about their businesses as normal because security has been fully beefed up.
The narrative of the killings in Lamu County has puzzled both the residents and the authorities. Sharon Momanyi, KTN Prime.
A truly horrific situation in Lamu. Meanwhile, anxiety continues to grip the border area between Wajir and Mandera following the killing of some 20 people in the latest attack there.
Here in Nairobi, President Uhuru Kenyatta told leaders from the 2 counties to work together to end the clan fighting immediately.
The Inspector General of Police has already summoned a section of area leaders to record statements on the Sunday violence.
And as Linda Ogutu now reports, the community leaders from both communities say the politics and historical injustices are largely to blame for the attacks.
2 days after violence in Wajir saw 20 people lose their lives and property destroyed, President Uhuru Kenyatta today met leaders from the region, and his message was clear: end the violence and the senseless killings. Indeed, for the people of Wajir and Mandera, peace has been elusive. So elusive, in fact, that for the second time in less than 2 months, the government sent a contingent of security personnel to quell tension and stop killings between the Godia and the Gare communities. Some community leaders who spoke on the attack before meeting the president sought to give their opinion on the violence. They say perceived historical injustices laced with politics are to blame for the senseless killings.
It is resource-based.
People just decided to go somewhere and drew their own maps and taking almost more than half of Wajir, and they claim that that is theirs.
The decision by the Inspector General to send an additional contingent of security officers to the area just hours after the killings, seen by leaders as a knee-jerk reaction that will not yield much. They insist the key to peace in the region between the two clans that have found it difficult to peacefully coexist lies with the president.
A presidential task force be appointed that's impartial and effective to bring both parties to the table.
Uhuru's concerns stem from the fact that several houses were burnt in the Sunday violence that saw hundreds displaced. Many of the residents have moved to camps fearing more attacks. His directive may quell what many leaders in the area see as neglect by the government. Fear is that if the conflict does not get the attention that it deserves, then it could escalate into a full-blown war.
The security forces are missing in most of the villages and towns in that part of the world, in that part of the country.
Inspector General of Police summoned area leaders hours after the latest attack on Sunday. They're required to say what they know about the violence that he says is being fueled by the leaders. While acknowledging that area leaders may have played a role in the clashes, they put the blame squarely on the government that they say has failed its people.
When you arm yourself and then clans start fighting is the time now the government tells leaders to go and record statements. In fact, it should be the security leaders who should record statements themselves, because they have completely failed to provide security to the citizens of this country.
Today's meeting between the president and area leaders comes even as court leaders raised concern on the way the government has handled the clashes in Wajir and Mandera. They say the speed of the response and the action taken by the government is unsatisfactory and gives the impression that the residents there are second-class citizens when it comes to security.
When we had Mpeketoni, the president nearly declared a state of emergency in Kenya. And you've seen how much resources have been committed by Minister Waiguru and others. Why are they maintaining a conspiracy of silence on Wajir? Why are they maintaining a conspiracy of silence on Moyale?
Security forces may be on the ground, but for the residents, it is their hope that a lasting solution to the violence will be found, if only to stop the senseless killings that have seen over 40 people lose their lives in the last 1 month. Linda Ogutu, KTN Prime.
Well, it's more than 40 people who've lost their lives in the last month. Over the last 2 months, since May, over 60 have been killed in clashes in that area. And considering the situation we just saw in Lamu, the question we're asking you this evening is, do you think that the government has lost control of security in the country? That's our big cue tonight.
Well, the security situation or lack of it is worrying, and you can get us with your comments. Please send us an SMS to the number 22155, or you can tweet us at Wilson_Mburu or at Kachungira or at KTN Kenya. We'll, of course, sample some of your views as the bulletin continues, and we will have a poll result of that question at the end of this live newscast. Let's move on. And the frequent flare-ups in Wajir and Mandera have come with many theories, but the conflict doesn't seem to end. KTN's Ian Wafula spent a few days in the area speaking to victims from both sides. And as he now reports, the conflict is complex and ending it may take more than just a few meetings in Nairobi.
These are the sites that have characterized parts of Wajir and Mandera counties over the past few years, and every time it happens, it seems fresh, even though the results are always the same. Multiple deaths, displaced families, and more questions with hardly any answers. At the center of it all are two communities with such a thin line between them, the Gare and Digodia. Wajir County is mostly dominated by the Digodia, hosting a number of other clans, among them the Gare. The leadership in Wajir town is composed of people from Digodia, Ogaden and Ajuran communities. The Gares are the minority here, although they have some of their own in the county assembly. In the neighboring Mandera County, the Gare are dominant and the Godia are minority. We have been here in Wajir and we've had a chance to talk to people from both the communities, and their sentiments are the same. All they want is peace. A number of theories also came up as to why they believe these clashes have been ongoing. 56-year-old Abdullahi Ibrahim sits outside a friend's house, now the only place that can shelter his wife and 10 children alongside his 8 grandchildren. Even his role as the chairperson of the Gari community in Wajir town would not give him immunity from the wrath of the youth who are torching houses of those who are not from their community.
Lakini hapa hakuna siasa ya gari ya siasa wa Dugudia, lakini bande ya Mandera huko Lamu wanapigana sababu ya siasa, lakini hapa hakuna siasa.
On the eve of the 29th of May, gunmen believed to be from the Gare community of Mandera County stormed Gunana village in Wajir County and killed 12 people. Later that evening, the bodies were transported to Wajir town for burial the next day. This was not good news for Abdullahi and his family.
The time walikuwa wanazika maiti ndo walianza kuchoma manyumba yetu. Mbeleni kwanza walianza kututisha. Baadaye tukatoroka na roho yetu tu ili tujiepuke kifo.
Simultaneously, hundreds of Digodia families at the border of the two counties fled their homes for fear of retaliatory attacks. Tarbaj, a few kilometers from Gunana village, was among the centers that received thousands of IDPs. Area Chief Abdullahi Eloso claims that the death of the 12 was linked to a road being constructed by the county government of Wajir at the border, an area known as Burumayo, which residents of Mandera claimed was within their border. According to him, after the first attack that led to the death of 3 people, leaders from both counties met and opted to halt the construction until a proper solution to the boundary conflict was found. However, this was not done.
On the day that we actually agreed the roadworks to stop, I think the next day is when the killings happened. In fact, the contractor was demobilizing his people from the site. You know, this is bush clearing, so it's over a long stretch. So by the time he went to call back his guys, you know, he came back with the bodies.
Conflict analyst Salah Abdi believes the conflict in the region is bigger than border lines.
How do we stop the conflict? There are 2 ways. Allow it to run its course. It's one way. It's radical, it is dangerous, and it is illogical to do that. And I think the tribal politicians and the people who actually do this, that might be what they're looking at. But the logical way to handle it is to actually do sufficient evidence collection and investigation and find out who is behind it.
Ian Wafula, KTN.
Well, as Ian Wafula reports, that is the situation in Wajir. More than 60 dead in the last 2 months. About 75,000 people displaced by the conflict. And this has been going on for a while. Well, tonight, I'm speaking to Ugas Sheikh Mohammed. He's a political activist or political leader. He's also been born and raised, as you say, in Wajir, and hopefully you can give us some insight into this issue and why it's not being solved as quickly as we'd hoped. Now, you were in that meeting with the president today, were you?
Yes.
And what happened in that meeting?
I think the president was agitated at the lack of progress and the lack of peace. He came out strongly that this government has done a lot for that part of the of the country. He mentioned that, and rightly so, he mentioned that this government has representation from that region in terms of number of resources and people who've been appointed to positions, and he was categorical that it is not good enough what the leaders are doing at this point.
That it's not good enough.
Yes.
So obviously one of the big questions that we have on the table at the moment is why is this conflict ongoing anyway? What is the problem? Some people say it's politics, some people say it's pastoral problems. What is the actual problem?
The problem is that we have a political problem, and the problem is in Mandera County. Unfortunately, that has simmered on for the last 3 years between the Digodia and the Gari.
So you're saying the problem is not in Wajir, it's Mandera?
Not at all. It's not. It is in Mandera. Unfortunately, it has been pushed into Wajir, and I think that needs to be very clear.
Okay.
Basically, we had a situation where there was small-scale fighting that was going on in Mandera County, and then that came into the elections time. It was escalated because of political posturing and seats. The Digodia would, basically feel that they were denied a seat in a county where they're the second majority, and as a result of that, there were issues, and they just continued on and escalated, and I don't think the government handled it correctly. And we have a situation where it spilled over to Wajir County.
So you say you don't think the government handled it correctly. What should they have done?
Well, the fact of the matter is, you handle problems before they become too big. And we don't think that they put in the efforts at the early stages. I think they should have deployed these forces way earlier. A case in point is the latest one in Gunana, for example, where we have over 30 people lost their lives and I think so many injured. In that situation, for example, there was a rapid deployment unit of the AP, which was sent from Nairobi, but were camped in Wajir. And I think they were waiting for something. We don't know what it is. They should have been there on site. And had they been on site, we will have averted the death of 30 people.
Well, you did say that the problem is political. So would deploying personnel, security personnel to the area, not actually solve the problem, but just quell it for a little while? What do you think is the actual solution to solving, to the solution to this political problem, as you put it?
The security structures do not solve political problems. We all know that. But they stop people from attacking others. So what we're saying is that if they're security forces, they become at least a deterrent in some form if they're present. But on the political side, I think we know what the problem is. The problem is there's inequitable sharing of resources in Mandera County. There is the perceived, and in some cases it might be true, that representation has not been equitable as well. And therefore we need to solve those problems. I think if those underlying issues are solved, we may not have the problems we have today.
So how specifically can those issues be solved?
We want the government of Mandera County to come out clearly and show that it is impartial, that it is there for everybody and not for a specific group. I'm sure they're doing some things right, but it's not enough. I think they need to come out clearly. And also the fact that their perceived issues, and rightly so. I think they need to go over those issues critically and negotiate in good faith, come out and take ownership of the problem. I think it's basically lack of taking ownership. That is, I think, to me, one of the biggest problems, passing the buck where it's not supposed to be.
So Gunana has been at the core of many of these issues. What is the significance of that particular small area?
Really nothing. There's no significance. Well, the point is, it's a settlement. It's close to another town on the other side. I think, it's not, we can't say it's Gunana because Burmayo, which is about 20 kilometers away, also in Wajir, is also on the border, has also seen the same issues. So, we cannot specifically say it is Gunana, but, that whole area, there's some serious issues. For example, both Gunana and Burmayo, everything has been burned down. So, the existence of the settlements have vanished completely. So, there's nothing at this point.
Well, thank you very much for speaking to us this evening.
Thank you.
Yes, that was Ugas Sheikh Mohammed, and he is a political activist born and bred in Wajir, and he says the problem is politics. Well, let's now go to some party politics. With that, controversial activist Moses Kuria has clinched the TNA ticket to run for parliament in Gatundu South. Kuria, who is wanted for alleged hate speech, says that he's confident of winning the seat that was once held by President Uhuru Kenyatta. But, as Samogina now reports, some of his opponents claim that there was massive rigging in the nomination exercise.
He receives the most coveted document there is in central Kenya politics, a near-sure ticket to parliament, the TNA nomination certificate. The former strategist of President Uhuru Kenyatta's The National Alliance Party, Moses Kuria, clinched the party's ticket to contest the Gatundu South seat.
Leaders assume that they are elected to office to be bosses over those people. I perceive that I'm going to be in parliament is just one guy who is ahead of the pack, and with all the people of that particular constituency working with me working with them towards alleviating the problems that we have.
Kuria beat his closest challenger, Joyce Wanjiku Ngugi, by over 1,000 votes in the controversial, hotly contested TNA primaries. Kuria garnered 8,343 votes ahead of Ngugi, the widow to the former area MP Joseph Ngugi Nyumu, who amassed 6,685 votes. Others were Joachim Kamere, who got 2,352 votes, and John Karingu with 1,811 votes. Nonetheless, Joyce Ngugi has challenged the results, alleging rigging claims, and vowed to seek judicial redress.
As a party, we still consider them as valuable members of the party and appreciate them. To the victors, Moses Kuria and Bwana George Wanjoy, we hope that you will carry the flag of the party successfully.
We chose not to impose any candidates in this election because those are principles that are very close to us as a party. Principles of democracy, public participation, and inclusivity.
In Gatundu South constituency, a section of the residents held a peaceful demonstration over rigging claims in Monday's TNA primaries. They claim that in at least 2 polling stations, the total number of votes surpassed the number of voters. The residents also accused Kiambu County TNA Chairman Muigai Njoroge of campaigning for one of the aspirants.
Kuanzia asubuhi, all the aspirants walikuwa wamesema hawatafanya hiyo chaguzi kwa sababu tulikuwa tumeelezwa kuna mtu ako na certificate kwa mfuko. Tunataka TNA headquarters iangalia hii maneno na mheshimiwa wetu, Mheshimiwa Rais, aangalia hapa ni kwake.
Given that TNA is the president's party while Gatundu South is Uhuru Kenyatta's constituency, a TNA ticket is a precious head start for the candidate even before the by-election date.
Moses Kuria, having been duly nominated as a National Alliance candidate.
But the party's candidate faces charges of hate speech. Kuria was summoned and is set to appear in court on Thursday over alleged hate speech on Facebook. The recommendation to prosecute Kuria was made by the National Cohesion and Integration Commission after complaints by the Law Society of Kenya over his Facebook posts, claiming the posts were intended to incite the public to violence against a specific community. The nomination exercise is a culmination of a proxy war within Kiambu County. While Kuria appeared to have the backing of MPs, Mrs. Ngugi, the widow of the immediate former area MP, is believed to be enjoying the backing of some quiet but powerful TNA politicians in Kiambu County. The Gatundu South by-election will be held in August. Samogina, KTN.
Let's go to Meru County now, where miraa farmers are bracing themselves for the UK ban on the crop, which takes effect from tonight. The British Home Office has reclassified the crop as a Class C illegal drug, and those caught in possession or trafficking it will face a jail term of up to 14 years. Patrick Amimo reports.
Maua town in Meru County is synonymous with the miraa trade. The crop provides a livelihood for thousands of farmers and traders here. However, many households in Meru County will be staring at poverty and joblessness as Britain effects the ban on miraa exports from Kenya. The UK was Kenya's last legal miraa market in Europe after Netherlands banned the crop 2 years ago. While banning the crop in July last year, the British Home Office argued the ban will help fight potential health and social harm.
If we fight miraa and solve miraa, economically, we shall really finish, and our people will not be able to go to school, they will not be able to have even somewhere to sleep, they will really never be able to go to the hospital if they are sick.
Miraa fetches higher profit margins than other agricultural crops in Meru. According to the Meru culture, proceeds from miraa sales is exclusively controlled by men. Kenya exports 80 tons of miraa to the UK weekly with an estimated value of around $2 million. Miraa is widely chewed by Somali and Yemeni communities in Britain. Those who chew miraa say it helps them focus their mind and keeps them awake for longer. Most homes have a few bushes of miraa, and it is used on cultural practices like during wedding proposals.
Yeah, I went and I proposed to a certain girl, but the condition was first I go and bring a certain quantity of miraa, then I was accepted.
Even though health experts found no direct evidence that miraa was harmful, Britain expressed concern that the country was becoming a hub for miraa trafficking.
There is a very clear cases of mental illnesses. There are people who've died for liver failures. There are, in terms of social issue, there are domestic violence. Somali women who are suffering in silence due to hard user husbands who beats them up and asking for more money.
The Kenyan government and lawmakers from Meru County unsuccessfully attempted to fight miraa ban in UK. President Uhuru Kenyatta and former Prime Minister Raila Odinga said they will petition the UK government to lift the ban as farmers look for alternative crops, but details of the diplomacy have not been disclosed. With the UK closing its doors to miraa, Somalia, Yemen and Djibouti are now the only remaining export markets for Kenyan miraa. Patrick Amimo, KTN.
Hii kupiga miraa marufuku itaadhiri uchumi wa Kenya zaidi. Manake huwa ndio sisi tumezoea kulima, tukilima miraa, tuna kilimo ingine, hii ndio tumezoea sisi.
Thank you for keeping it, KTN.
Next tonight, the Coalition for Reforms and Democracy is upset over reports that the police have cancelled their rallies in parts of the North Rift. CORD was set to hold what they're calling consultative rallies in Eldoret 64 Stadium, Iten and Kapsabet this weekend. Last week, Uasin Gishu Governor Jackson Mandago said he would not allow what he called incitement in a county that is still reeling from the effects of post-election violence. A statement from the head of CORD Secretariat, Norman Magaya, condemned the move, saying that CORD had complied with all constitutional requirements for the 64 Stadium rally. This came as the CORD Senate Minority Leader Moses Wetangula and other CORD MPs claimed that CORD was being targeted unfairly in the summonses over hate speech.
A few of our colleagues volunteered to go to the police yesterday, and the questions they are being asked to record statements about are as ridiculous as they are laughable. And we see this as a very clear manifestation by the Jubilee regime to not only embark on a systematic erosion of the Bill of Rights enshrined in our Constitution that gives every Kenyan the freedom of expression, freedom of thought, and all other freedoms, but a move to silence, intimidate, and harass persons, particularly in the political arena, that hold different shades of opinion from what Jubilee holds. We want the office of the DPP to be very clear on this, and we want Keriako Tobiko to come public and tell Kenyans that his office will not be used by politics, will not be an extension of the Jubilee government, and is not going to be used as a machine to steamroll and truncate freedom of speech in this country. Because
now, the last you probably heard of butter trade was in your history class. But a small market in Elgeyo Marakwet County, maize is easily traded for meat, and you do not need hard cash to get a bottle of milk. The market also serves as a meeting and interaction point for communities that were once sworn enemies. Mercy Kandie now tells us about the weighty matter of butter trade in a market called Kilos.
Tuesdays in Marakwet West is an important day. Everyone that attends the Kilos market knows this. Kilos market in Marakwet West is not your ordinary kind of market. Look keenly and you will notice the traditional barter trade, exchange of goods for goods. Here, you don't necessarily need money to buy items. Like today, Mzee Kiara takes milk from his customer in exchange for his meat. The meat that Mzee Kiara sells is not measured. There is no weighing scale. They tell me your eyes and hands will tell you.
Tangu utotoni mimi nafima hii nyama. Tangu mimi kuanza kazi ya kilo.
The meat is slaughtered and prepared traditionally.
Naona hawa wase wanyama wanafanya kienyeji, hakuna butchery hapa, na pia wanatumia tu macho kuona vile wanafanya biashara yao, sababu hawana ratili. Ni wase experience, wako na miaka mingi kwa hiyo kazi.
The uniqueness of the Kilos market to the outsider is the barter trade. But for the residents, what the interaction here does is all that matters. The border village was prone to cattle rustling a few years ago. The communities here were enemies. The market changed this.
Hizo inaleta amani sana, sababu hata vijana wenye wachao wamepata kwa hapa, wameoa watu ya Baringo, wameoana yana, wamekutana hapa ili mtu amepata kwa pipi hapa, mwingine ameenda Baringo. Unaona watu ya Masop wameolewa Baringo, wengine wameolewa Marakwet, so hii ni soko ya amani.
It's a market for everyone, even the elderly who come to trade tobacco. Others, like Mzee Chelimo, need money, so today he sells sheepskin that earns him 50 shillings. And as the market goes on, picking by the hour, these women from Baringo clean their makeshift hotel. Business booms here, grounds they wouldn't trend on initially. After a few hours, it's the most popular eating joint at the market.
Shida yetu moja tu ni kwamba hapa hatuna publicity ya kutupimia nyama, sasa tunapatisha vile mnaona.
From herbal medicine to traditional shoes, popularly known here as kinyira, the path of peace is what these three communities chose. The bloodshed here today is from the gods only. No more bloodshed from the clashes.
The unique trade here at Kilos, the barter trade, ensures that one gets to feed their families. But at the end of the day, what one really takes home is the intangible peace, ensuring that these three communities in the region live together in harmony. Mercy Kandie, KTN, Kilos, Marakwet West.
My name is Bonitunya. This is Business. Mbuvi Ngunze is a name you need to remember because he's been Kenya Airways' Chief Operating Officer, and he's now been appointed as head of the listed carrier as Chief Executive Officer. In a statement to newsrooms this afternoon, KQ Chairman Evanson Mwaniki said Ngunze will be assuming office from 1st of December 2014. He replaces Titus Naikuni, who is expected to retire at the end of November 2014. Now, in January this year, the KQ board engaged the services of an international executive search firm, Spencer Stewart Limited, to assist in the process of finding a replacement for Naikuni. Ngunze has served as CEO since September of 2011. He joined the national carrier from cement maker Lafarge. Moving on to other matters, it was double victory for the British oil explorer Tullow Oil and its partner, the Canadian-owned Africa Oil, as they launched a new oil and gas find in northern Kenya. The new discovery comes barely a week after a similar announcement by the Australian explorer in Lamu Basin. Here's more. The two new discoveries are 39 meters of net oil pay and 11 meters of net gas pay in Ngamia 2 well, which is 1.7 kilometers away from Ngamia 1 well, the site of the country's first find in early 2012. Africa Oil discovered gas deposits in a 1,000-meter range at the Sala 1 site. The firm, just like Tullow, says it will commence tests to ascertain the exact deposit amount and its economic viability in the coming days.
Net pay in an oil find is a measure of the thickness of an economically viable oil reservoir. In January this year, Tullow announced that it had discovered net oil pay of between 160 and 200 meters in Amosing 1 and of between 20 and 80 meters in Ewoi 1, both located in Block 10 BB, marking Kenya's significance as a potential oil exporter. The Communications Authority of Kenya has renewed Safaricom's operating license for a period of 10 years after the firm paid a 2.3 billion renewal fee. Now this brings to an end a tussle between the two on the renewal of the firm's license. Here's Michael Karanja.
For close to a year, there has been some tension between Safaricom and the regulator over the methodology used in gauging industry players' quality of service. In its latest report, the Communications Authority found that Safaricom had scored 50% in its quality of service, failing to meet the standards over the past 4 years. Safaricom on its part has considered that the quality of its service is not the best, which it has attributed to the scarce spectrum and a huge customer base. But after lengthy negotiations and an independent audit, Safaricom was given the all-clear to renew the operating license for $27 million.
This has been possible because of the commitment and cooperation of the players in this sector. We at the authority are committed on our mandate to sustain and further improve on this performance in the coming years.
The announcement made as the authority adopted a new corporate image to be in line with the provisions of the Constitution. An amended Information Act required the authority to change its identity and take up an extended mandate that will see it regulate the broadcast industry and electronic transactions.
The pledge is that we shall meet the expectations of all those we serve. We are equal to the challenges of the industry.
During the rebranding ceremony, the authority also wrote a check of 4.09 billion shillings to the Exchequer, a surplus from its 2013 financial year. The government is keen on growing ITUs in the country with none other than the president championing this cause.
I challenge the authority to strive to create an environment that will facilitate universal, affordable, and equitable access to ICT. Equally, the industry at large will have to support the newly formed Communications Authority in its renewed mandate. The benefits of doing so are significant.
With the regulator giving back to the Exchequer 4 billion shillings, it's no wonder that the government is placing a lot of emphasis on the information communication sector as the next frontier for growth. Michael Karanja, KTN Business.
Counties were supposed to be key in developing or the propagation of state power and bringing services closer to the people. But a report from the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Kenya, ISPAC, now says this dream is yet to be realized.
To all of us, as the fanfare is being played.
The promulgation of the Constitution of Kenya 2010 ushered in hopes and optimism of devolving resources from the central government. The departure from the norm was to actualize the Kenyan dream of empowering all parts of this great nation. But a study by ISPAC shows that the reality is nothing close to the dream 1 year on.
That we thought we could solve our problems that has bedeviled this country for 50 years in 1 year through devolution.
As it stands, there is contention on what is the best formula to share the national cake, even though the Constitution stipulates a minimum threshold of 15% of the last audited national government books of accounts.
CRA tells us that counties need or require 278 billion, and then Budget and Economic Council says they can only give 238 billion. Then the National Assembly recommends 218 billion. Then through negotiation, we get 226 billion. No one is communicating to us.
Key to the counties was, the study notes, many counties cannot access the Integrated Financial Management Information System, IFMIS, due to a lack of skills and the long and sustained system downtime experienced in far-flung counties, which impacts on disbursement and utilization of funds.
All the 17 counties we visited, we found them connecting into IFMIS using orange modems.
But counties have also been put on the spotlight for failing to stem the reduction in revenues following the transition from municipal and city councils to county governments. The report attributes a reduction to conflict between workers with former municipal councils and the newly elected county government officials.
Why was it higher when the local authorities were collecting? And all of us demonized the local authorities that they were thieves.
The lack of adequate internal audit mechanisms has also stalled the efficient and effective utilization of taxpayer funds, which has impacted on service delivery. And this, the analysts say, must come to an end if devolution is to work.
But the national government need to move with speed to make sure that the counties have capacities to be able to implement the functions that we transferred en masse last year.
Adelaide Chongole, KTN Business.
Well, let's talk about the numbers now with a look at the financial market review coming up next. I'm Nicholas Mudimba. Now, as Kenya continue to watch other countries take part in the 2014 World Cup in Brazil, the national 15s team has vowed to do everything possible and give Kenyans something to celebrate by qualifying for the Rugby World Cup for the first time. The team is set to depart for Madagascar tomorrow for the Confederations of African Rugby tournament that double as 2015 World Cup qualifiers in Madagascar.
After failed attempts to qualify for the 15th Rugby World Cup, the national team says it cannot wait any longer to make an appearance at the 15th Rugby World Cup stage. Under the stewardship of South African Jerome Powata, the Kenyan team has been under an intense program and is just back from a high-altitude training in Nanyuki.
So the guys are really hungry and waiting for the first game, so they're ready.
Kenya will be hoping to emerge African champions and earn an automatic 2015 World Cup slot. A 26-man squad picked from the 15th and 7th players will depart the country for the Confederations of African Rugby tournament, where they will be up against Zimbabwe, Namibia and host Madagascar. Kenya is the defending African champion and remains a strong contender for the World Cup ticket, despite the fact that Zimbabwe and Namibia have qualified for World Cup before.
We've never been in a World Cup 15s final. We don't know how that feels, so I think that's for everyone, even for the whole of Kenya, so it would be a great thing.
It's been a while since we gathered this much talent together, and the 15th has been on ascendancy, so it's about time we deliver as well. We've been on ascendancy for the past 2-3 years, just focusing Kenya 15s. Now we've been in the 7th boys just to up it a bit and put a lot of pressure on ourselves.
The team captain Wilson Kopondo admits that the 15th team has been behind the shadow of their 7th counterparts, with his sentiments getting a backing from head coach Jerome Powata, who says the team is ready for any challenge that comes its way.
A journey for me now in the last 2 years, but I must say we really stepped up a bit this year from January, getting the guys to South Africa, playing in the Vodacom Cup.
So for us, this is the last attempt at a World Cup qualifier for a good number of the team. And then for the rest of the guys, we'd want to see them take Kenya Rugby now to the next level. We've been stagnant at this level for a while. Now it's about time we follow the 7th suit.
Colin Sinjera, Andrew Amonde, Michael Agevi and Lavi Nasego are some of the 7th players who will join 15's experienced players like Brian Nyikuli, Edwin Achayo and David Chenge, among others, for the Madagascar onslaught. Lynn Washira, KTN Sports.
Right, and of course, in terms of rugby, Masako 7 will be coming up into you over the weekend from Friday to Sunday. Be sure to catch our team in Machakos for the tournament. Of course, as far as World Cup is concerned now, Uruguay will take on Belgium in the last 16 matches. I'm Nicholas Mudimba. Have yourself a good night.
Well, just before we wrap up this edition of KTN Prime, let's take you back to our big Q. This evening, we asked you whether you think the government has lost control of the security situation in the country.
And here are the results. 88% said yes, the government has lost control of the security in the country, while 12% said no.
Well, I'll read some of your SMSs. This one from Sam in Nairobi, and he's one of the few no's. He says, no, they haven't. Security may have deteriorated, but if the government had lost control, I doubt you'd have peace to even read your broadcast.
Mike Mwangi says, with all these subsequent attacks, I believe it has failed.
And another one here, someone who didn't leave a name, but he says, yes, very much. I traveled from Lodwar on a public bus full of many non-Kenyans, and not a single traffic police officer inspected us all the way until we reached Nairobi. So he seems to think that that is a major loophole.
And Godfrey Kinyanjui here says, killings, explanations, no actions. When is it going to stop? Very good question.
Indeed it is. Well, we thank you very much for having joined us this evening for KTN Prime and for sharing your thoughts as well. Our sign language interpreter was William Silla, doing a great job as always. I'm Nancy Kachungira. Do have a very good night.
My name is Wilson Mburu. Enjoy the rest of your viewing. Good night.